Are we live?
Mm. We are live, Dr. Cohen.
We're live with Gross Anatomy, where we explore the sights, smells, and sounds of medicine, how it relates to movies, TV, books, pop culture, Lauren Taylor, and the world around us. And I am Dr. Jason Cohen. And who am I joined by?
I am Lauren Taylor,
And there
and
you go.
yeah.
There you go. What are we doing today, Lauren? What are we doing?
Today I am excited because we have a guest, someone that you've met, but I've never met, Sarah Aviram, and she is an inspirational speaker, and she's an author, she's a resource consultant, but you recently read her book. It's called Remotivation. It's a book designed to help you create your own version of success. And so I'm very excited to have this best-selling author on the show with us today.
I am too for so many reasons. And hey, there she
Hello
is.
there. Good to be here.
It's so exciting to have you with us. Well, how'd we meet?
We met at a wedding.
We
My
did. We did.
cousin and a friend of yours.
Yes, yes. And the truth is, I first met and fell in love with your mother. Is
As so many do.
exactly. We were sitting next to each other in Mexico. We were all in Mexico at a destination wedding of your cousins, and I was sitting on what? How do you even describe that kind of boat thing
It's
that we were
like
on?
a
What?
Mexican gondola, let's say.
So what's you're the OG is kind of what I was really excited about to talk to you. What your book? I have it with me. I don't know if you have it with you.
Oh, I
Remotivation.
do have a copy here somewhere. Yeah.
There you go. Mine is very. If you notice, mine is very worn out. Yours is like much
Well,
newer, but
yeah.
mine. I was reading through it and everything. And so, what's the story? Tell me your story about this whole thing.
Sure. So the story is my career has been in human resources and talent development. So I've worked at large companies like PepsiCo and Avon, and then some smaller high tech companies. And in my last corporate role, I was the director of talent development for a New York based tech company. And I was researching future of work, and all the signs were pointing to this remote work future. Now, this was way before COVID, and all the signs were pointing that remote work was going to be more and more the way that employees wanted that flexibility, that freedom to work from anywhere. And more companies were understanding that in order to have the best possible talent they could in their organization, they need to be open to that talent living in a city that might not be where their principal office is located. So I thought that was really interesting. And I thought that if we, as if our company wanted to really compete for the best talent moving forward, we might have to be open to the possibility of not just looking outside our main city, but letting our employees be flexible. But we didn't really know what the challenges and opportunities would be of remote work. So I pitched myself as this guinea pig that I should work remotely for a year, for the year of 2019. And I should.
Oh wait, I got to cut you off
Oh,
because in reading your book, you made it sound like it was something you really wanted to do anyway. You were trying to figure out how to do the remote work, and you kind of used that as a way to then spin it to your company, right? It wasn't so much like, oh, let me help the company. It was more like, let me figure out how to do remote work and pitch it to the company. At least that's what you say in the
yeah.
book,
I
right?
mean, it was definitely the combo of both. It was, I think this could serve the company. And my dream was to be able to work from around the world for a year and to do to have that flexibility myself. And I always am thinking of like, well, what's the win-win, right? How do I benefit the most from this personally? How do I support my company uh, in doing this, and how can I get the yes to make it all happen? So I had to find the business case. Why would a CEO let me do this? What was it? What would be in it for the company? So that was the combo, the magic combo. So I put together the business case of why remote work was the future, why we had to really think seriously about it. And I found this program that they're not a job provider, but they facilitate your ability to work remotely from around the world with a cohort of other professionals from different industries and businesses. And you actually travel as a group. And this company finds your co-working spaces, your travel accommodations, and you sign up for this set itinerary and you move as a group together to a different country every month for 12 months.
How old was that company at the time? Was it a brand new company, or had it been around for a while
They
already?
had been around for, I want to say, about 4 years. And it's kind of
Wow.
wild because as of last week, they actually went under, not because of lack of interest, but they were acquired by a company. There was financial problems, etc. So unfortunately, they only had like a 10-year run. But
Wow.
yeah,
Huh. But interestingly, they had been around for 4 years even before you found them.
yep, exactly.
And how successful were they before? When you first were you kind of still a guinea pig, or were they pretty established?
I mean, they were established as far as the people that already were kind of like in this digital nomad community that was small yet growing.
Yeah.
They became way more popular after COVID, but not just after COVID. Once people could travel and many more people were remote, they started to offer like 1 month programs, shorter stints, because not everyone could get permission to go away for a year or have that
Yeah.
flexibility.
And did you have to take a pay cut or something? Like, did you have to make some deal with your boss in order to justify it? Like,
No, what was
did you have
so
to
amazing,
sell a kidney?
my only deal, which was not really a deal, I said, there's no additional cost to you. So you pay my salary like normal. I pay for this
Mhm.
program like I would pay for my own rent.
Right.
Two, I said, if at any point you feel like I'm not performing at my best, I will come home. Like if you feel like
Mm.
I'm not getting the work done, that's fine. And my third one was I will work 4 hours of Eastern time no matter where in the world I'm located. So even if I'm in Japan and there's a 13-hour difference, I'll make sure that at a minimum, 4 of the 8 hours I work per day are on Eastern time. So that was
Mm.
great for both of us because I could ensure that, let's say in Japan, I had any meetings with the East Coast between 8 p.m. and midnight. But then I could use the 4 other hours of time when no one was working. And that's actually when I got so much work done because it was totally uninterrupted. No
Yeah.
emails, no Slack messages, none of that. So that was actually really nice.
And how hard of a pitch? Because it was pre-COVID, right? What year was it?
2019.
So you really didn't hear so much about remote work and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How hard was it a pitch? Did it really take a lot of convincing, or?
I went step by step. So first, and
Mm.
this was what was wild, is it was this sort of interim 6 weeks where my boss, who was the head of HR at the company, had left the organization. And until they found someone, I reported to the CEO. And he wanted
Right.
to see, like, he's like, all right, I want your 2019 talent development plans. And so I was spending a lot of time doing all this research, reading every McKinsey report, PwC, Deloitte, all the future of work research I could find. And so much of it talked about remote work. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go into this 15-minute meeting and ask for the boldest thing I could think of. But I'm going to start it with, here's what I'm seeing as the trends going on in the world of work. And then I'm going to see how he reacts. If he's like, oh, I don't
Mhm.
believe in remote work, that's ridiculous, nobody does a good job, no one's, then it wouldn't have worked. But he's like, yeah, I think there's merit to that. And I was like, okay. And so I kept going. I've read about these programs that actually facilitate the ability, and I think these programs are going to become even more widespread. And he's like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And then so once he said that was interesting, I said, well, I would love to do a program like that. And then so that's kind of how it went. And his biggest concern was like the any potential legal issues or risk. And he said, if you get our general counsel on board, then yeah, I would 100% consider it. And I was pretty tight with
Wow.
our general counsel, so I was like, I think this is going to work. So I went to her. I brought in a representative from that company that organized a trip. We talked through all the potential issues. She had them sign an additional document. We made it work. And then 2 months later, sold all my furniture, gave up my apartment lease,
Wow.
and got on a flight to Lima, Peru.
That's,
Wow.
yeah, that's the dream,
Jeez.
to have a big professional job and still be able to go around the world for a year. That's amazing. But I feel like the landscape is kind of changing now. Or I mean, that's what I'm hearing here. I'm in the East Coast too, in like the DC area. They're trying to make everyone come back to the office, and they're being pretty strict about it. Like, are you finding a lot of people coming to you asking you for advice, like how to stand up to their boss or what they can do
You
or
know,
how they can keep the remote life?
it's interesting. Like, I never tell companies like this should be your policy or remote work's the answer. Or I think it is a shame that some companies forgot the lessons learned during COVID when we were all forced to be remote, or for the most part, many industries were, and how productive people were and how much things really got done. And how performance was based on deliverables, not on the time spent in your seat, like looking like you were busy. And I
Yeah.
think that is one shame that comes with it. But I get some organizations have real estate costs and other things to keep in mind and wanting to bring their people back to the office. But what was interesting that I think people didn't expect from the research I did while I was traveling, and kind of the main message of now the talks I do at organizations, is not remote work is the answer. It's actually, I did it. I lived it with a lot of other people, and we thought it would be the answer to our dissatisfaction at work. We thought that being able to work from the beach in Bali would make us feel more fulfilled and motivated to do our jobs. And we got there, and certainly in the short term, it was. But after a while, we were like, something's still missing. Like, I still feel stuck and unfulfilled, and I don't really know why. And this is kind of my big aha moment. It was like that famous quote, like, wherever you go, there you are.
There you are.
Like if you hate your job in Houston, you're going to hate it in Hanoi.
Right.
And what really
Right.
needs fixing is your motivation to do the work itself. And I know some people look at me like, oh, if I had the chance to work in Bali, are you kidding me? Like, and the gratitude and the privilege is not lost on me. But that's what was so fascinating, is that it wasn't just me. It was so many of the people I was with that were feeling similarly kind of still stuck. And they thought, this was really going to make the difference. And it just was a good lesson in, a lot of times we try to change things outside of ourselves and our external environment, hoping that that's going to change how we feel inside. And it doesn't.
Yeah. So then at what point in your journey did you realize, hey, I have a book here? Because I am wrestling myself with trying to figure out, do I have a book here, in my life and stuff, and where's my book? At what point did you say, I have a book here.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
My commitment to myself was to write one blog every month about what I was learning, and not just like, oh, I had this delicious like Thai soup today. Like, it wasn't a travel blog. It was really like, what am I learning and observing? And it was almost a bit more of I wouldn't say like a human resources blog, but it was more of like a experiential, kind of philosophical blog about what I was learning and experiencing that had to do with the world of work. And
So you were doing that every day? You were blogging every day?
not every day. It was my commitment to myself was once a month, I'm going to write a blog. And I traveled to 12 months and I would just do one a month. So like, it wasn't a huge commitment. I was journaling every day for myself.
Okay. And you were posting that blog to friends
I had
and
a
family
website at the time, and I posted it. I would share it on not LinkedIn really. I did it more like for friends, like Facebook or Instagram, so like personal. But I started to be like, wow, I'm learning a lot of interesting things. Like, friends are coming to me about, they know I'm the HR person in the group, and all of us had different professions. And we had lawyers, graphic designers, business owners, digital marketing experts. And I just often felt like, oh, I've got an exercise if you want to figure that out, or I've got a toolkit, or I've got a book you could read, or I have an idea. And then we did a lot of these things called like sharing sessions, where each of us, because we had our own expertise, would like do a workshop every month. And so I started to do like a workshop of one I would have done back at my tech company about motivation and fulfillment at work. And everyone was like, wow, this is so helpful. This is so interesting. And I was like, ooh, okay, there's something here. I feel like I've got this really good HR toolkit for my career of all these exercises, questions, conversations you could have with your boss, things you could ask yourself to better understand motivation and fulfillment. Plus, I was using the people I was traveling with as this like in-house focus group of my direct audience that I could like survey, I could ask questions to, I could have them workshop an idea with me. And I just, through all of that, I was really realizing like what at the end of the day was mattering most, plus all the other research I'd done. And I narrowed it down to really like 6 core drivers of our fulfillment. And those 6 are our relationship to money, identity, routines, growth, impact, and joy. And once I identified those 6, I was like, I could write a book about those 6. And I could divide it that way. And I could give everyone chapters and exercises and stories about each one and how they can manage and activate each one to be more fulfilled at work.
Hmm. Did you consider yourself a writer, or it kind of just came out of nowhere, or were you always a writer person?
I was always a bit of a writer, not publicly or professionally so much, but I was writing trainings I delivered at work, writing um, proposals, internal proposals for um, ideas. And I always worked very closely with our internal PR and communications team at the companies I worked with. I was part of change management initiatives where we had to write manuals. We had to understand, like, how do we get our people bought into something? So I had, I guess, a lot of writing experience, but not in a traditional book sense.
Yeah. And did you start the writing while you were away, or that was all after the 12 months when you came
I
back?
started it while I was away. I stuck to that blog every month, but when I started looking at these blogs, I thought if I had just expanded each of these, they could be a chapter in a book. And so I had a goal of finishing the first draft of my book by the end of that travel experience. And the
Wow.
wild thing was that the 1 year started March 1st of 2019 and ended March 1st of 2020, right before COVID really blew up in the States. So
Yeah.
I finished at the end of February, the first draft of this book. I fly home from Cape Town, South Africa to New York. And the only question they asked me when I board the flight is, have you been to China in the last 14 days? We want to know if you've been exposed to this new coronavirus.
Yeah.
And I hadn't. So I said no.
Yeah.
And I got on the
Yeah.
flight, arrive home. I go back into my office for 1 week, and they're like, everyone go home because of COVID. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, everyone's going to start working remotely. I just wrote a book about this for what I thought was a small but growing population of remote workers. This pandemic is going to accelerate that trend by at least a decade. I need to get this book out there. So I got an editor quickly. I was like, I'm just going to self-publish and get this out the door. I'm not going to shop this around and wait 2 years to get it on bookshelves.
Yeah. And what was that process like? Was that it? Was it amazing, or
Yeah, I
what
mean,
was?
you know what it was? Like for me, as obviously as awful as everything that happened during COVID, it was such a time of focus because there was nothing else going on, nothing distracting me. Work was even a bit slow because our company was in the middle of splitting into two. There was a lot of things going on, so I just really had a lot of time to focus on writing. No one was going out, no one was doing anything. So me and my editor were meeting, weekly, going over everything. And by June of 2020, I was ready to publish. And so we did it. We made it happen.
Did you
That
wind up going on podcasts and talks and things like that in the beginning,
I
or?
did. Yes, I did a lot of that right away. And as you can imagine, most of the talks I did were virtual. Uh, and a lot of companies were like, well, we need help with this, like, so it was great. I started with my network of friends that worked at Bank of America, American Express, Google, like these amazing brands. And I was
Wow.
happy to talk for a very small fee in the beginning, just to be able to help and share what I knew. And then kind of got referrals, and the word started spreading. And then once things got in person, got to do a lot more in person. So yeah.
You're the OG. That's I
Yeah,
love that, right?
that that is crazy timing. That's just yeah.
It was
It's like us, Lauren. We were the OG podcasters, right?
Yes,
Weren't we?
we were the very first
great.
podcast. Yeah,
No one had a podcast before us. We were the very first. After we
yes.
started our podcast, everybody. Although interestingly, we started this thing before COVID too, and I remember our early episodes when it was still in the news. I remember we even, I hate to say, made light of some of the COVID stuff because we were in person and our guests were in person, and it was bizarre, but we've grown too, but we weren't as prescient. How do you say that word? Prescient, like foreseeing, like foretelling. Presence. You were present.
Yeah.
I think I'm butchering the word, but I love and hate you for so many reasons because I see the whole remote work thing, and it's kind of hard for a doctor to, I'm envious. I love it. I love the idea. The podcast obviously lets us do it, but as a medical person, I hate you because you're able to be successful remotely, and I, at least as of now, I can't really do surgery on someone on the beach in Bali. So you have doctors and healthcare people coming to you and saying, how do we do something like this?
I don't work with individuals, and I know that it's very difficult for people in specific professions like yours for sure. I think the silver lining I would give you is similar to what I mentioned before about how it does seem like this catch all silver bullet to make someone happy. And of course, having flexibility in your day to day and choosing your environment and when you can do your laundry or pick the kids up from school, or all these things definitely add amount of joy to our lives. But what I saw also is that even with that, how many people are unfulfilled, and just realizing that people in your profession specifically who are making such an incredible impact and are actually saving people's lives and have a sense of purpose and understand the value that their work is providing to individuals, to the community, to the world at large, is so much more powerful than any type of flexibility someone could have. And I think we often can see people who seem successful from the outside. They earn a certain amount of money, they have a certain title, they can work from wherever they want. And then we fill in the blanks about their levels of fulfillment or happiness. But a lot of times, what they're really lacking is that sense of purpose and impact, and still feel a bit stuck and unfulfilled because they're missing a critical driver of one's fulfillment. And so I wouldn't forget about that part.
Yeah, for sure.
That's Dr. Cohen, that's what I was going to ask you. So you're reading the book. Is there like one of the six things that you're like really focused on? Like, what would you say you need to
Well,
remotivate yourself? Like, what would,
well, for me, the part that speaks to me a little bit is, learning from people. You have that whole part of. I took some notes. Both learn from experiences you talk about, and then you also talk about. Do you specifically say find mentors or?
Yeah, it's
Or
I call it the
yeah,
70-20-10 model.
yes, yes. So all of that stuff I love. And learn from others. Action number 4: learn from others. Like all those things, I think excite me because I run this pre-health program at the hospital. So I have all these students all the time, and that's what interests me is mentorship and finding mentors and being a mentor, and how do you do that. And so you talk about it, and I'm curious actually how who are your mentors, and do you now currently have your own group of mentees? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'll back it up to explain just a bit to our listeners here about what I mean by all of this. So like, there's a common framework in the world of talent development called the 70-20-10 model. And that means that 70% of the way we learn and acquire new knowledge is from on the job experiences. It's from doing it, it's from practicing it. it's from, on the job experience. 20% is learning through others, through mentorship, through coaching, through being coached, through shadowing. And then 10% is kind of formal training, degrees, certifications. And oftentimes someone wants to develop a new skill. They say, okay, I want to be a manager one day. Like, what's the training I can take on how to be a good manager? And that's fine, but that's really only 10% of the way they're really going to learn how to be a good manager. And it's not like some hard and fast ratio, like we're dividing the 70, 20, and the 10 and measuring it exactly. But it's just a reminder to look holistically about the best way to develop a new skill, with the majority of it being on the job. So that 20% of mentorship that I get, and it's a really interesting question you asked, because as like kind of solopreneur, I work on my own. It can be really lonely. And then I'm like, who am I learning from? Who is teaching me? How do I keep growing and developing my skills? And certainly I'm getting that 70% of learning by doing. Like, you pitch a proposal to a company, it doesn't go well. You're like, how can I do it better next time? You get on stage, you do a keynote talk, and you thought a joke you were going to say would be funny and it falls flat, and you kind of learn from that. That's all the learning by doing. But the 20%, and there's certainly a lot of training on how to be a better speaker, how to be a better leadership coach. But the 20% of learning through others, I was struggling with, like, how am I going to get this? So I've actually joined this amazing community of speakers, professional speakers, called Impact 11. And I love feeling like the kindergarten kid in a high school class. They're all, they definitely range in experience, but there's so many of them that have been doing this for, 20 years and have incredible experience, and so generous with their knowledge and sharing what works, what doesn't work, from the performance and craft of public speaking to the business side of it, to the sales and the marketing, and how to work with speaker bureaus. And so there are 2 weekly calls I join, and there's quarterly master classes I go to, and that's been incredible.
Why is it called Impact 11?
Because they say from a scale of 1 to 10, as of the impacts we want to make, we want to go 11.
I got it. I thought maybe there were like 11 people at a time or something allowed to be in it.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point, though. I mean, you could always look online for different groups. I'm sure there are, like, I've never heard of Impact 11, but that's cool that exists. And there's probably a lot of groups like that for people's specific needs. That's
totally cool. There's so many professional organizations. And it's interesting because as someone who's a speaker, you realize how many professional associations are out there, because they're always looking for speakers. So, like, I get connected or asked to speak from things you never knew existed. The Dental Association of New Brunswick, New Jersey, or whatever. Like, there's so many of these specialized professional organizations that if you don't have a mentor or people to learn from or people that you want to give back to, there's so many ways to find them. You just have to look.
Do you have a mentor?
I don't have, I would say, like, one specific person I would call my mentor. I think unofficially through this organization, I have a few people that I talk to often. But what I do have that's really interesting, because I don't think a mentor has to be someone from your profession. Mm-hmm. I have an accountability buddy, and we kind of met very randomly through this online course we're both taking, kind of a professional development course. He is a filmmaker, and he has a film school, and he lives in California. I live in New York. We've never met. And for 4 years, we've spoken once a week. And we talk about our goals for the week and what we want to achieve. And did we do what we say we wanted to do last week? And we just hold each other accountable and give each other ideas. And we have never worked in each other's fields.
Wait, so how did you meet? And then do you talk on the phone, or you talk via Zoom? And how did you even meet?
We, through this professional development course, which was an online course in the middle of COVID, we both were in it. And the course recommended, like, finding an accountability buddy. And if you're interested, put your name on this Excel sheet, and, and then just put your email address, and then either add your name or just email someone on the list. And I just was like an alphabetical order. I'm like, okay, this guy, I don't know. So I emailed him, and I'm like, want to be my buddy?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's worked out really well.
I do want to say that the one thing that that COVID did give me, which is it's a good and a bad thing, is we never used to do virtual visits with our patients.
Mm,
Um, but I do now do it. A patient always would come in for their post-op visit or their follow-up visit or to go over lab results. Um, but now I do a lot of virtual visits with patients, and rarely, like a day I don't go into that I'm not planning on going into the office, I can maybe do one or two of those virtual visits from wherever. But for me, it's like a love-hate thing because as a doctor, as part of our training, we're like taught that you're in front of the patient and with the patient. So I mean, I love the fact that it saves time and money for both the patient and me, and they don't have to pay for parking and all that stuff.
mhm.
And I love the efficiency of it. But I kind of feel like I'm not seeing patients today. I'm just talking, I kind of feel like I'm not really, it's a weird thing a little bit.
Yeah, it can take
I don't
the
know.
personal connection out of it a little.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I do, so because of our social media, we do get patients that are sometimes far away that we do these virtual visits from. What about you? Do you have a big social media presence too?
I don't love spending too much time on social media, but I know that in order for people to find me that are outside of my network to hire me to speak, most of my business is either keynote talks, workshops, or leadership coaching. They need to see what I look like speaking. They need to know what I think. They need to understand my opinions on topics related to the work I do. And I have to be out there. So
Yeah.
my platform of choice is LinkedIn because I work with businesses, mostly not individuals. And so that makes the most sense for me. And so sometimes people find me through there, or I will notice, oh, this person's been liking my last few posts. Like, I wonder if I could help them some way. So sometimes I'll even message someone that's, I see showing a lot of interest or engagement with my posts. And I'll say, like, hey, would love to connect. Like, I see that my content's resonating with you. Is there, anything you want to talk about? Or do you think that a workshop like the one I mentioned might be beneficial to your organization? So that's been really helpful. Um, Instagram, I honestly I've put stuff up there, but I don't spend a lot of time. I put it to have a presence because it's important to have a presence. It's not something I spend a lot of time on. Maybe in the future I might focus more on that. But for me, if I have to focus on one place, the best thing for my business is LinkedIn.
Hmm. It's interesting. When we first met, I was talking about two of the authors, speakers who really motivate me, who I like to listen to. Simon Sinek, who you actually quote and talk about in your book,
Mm-hmm.
and Dan Ariely, and they're both pretty active on Instagram. I don't know how much trolling on Instagram you do, but they're both pretty
Mm-hmm.
active. And I I mean, not to tell you what to do because you're the expert, but I think with your skills and your book, I think you would be huge. I'm like, why aren't you on Instagram?
Yeah,
Because I think it would be huge. I could see you with Simon Sinek and Dan Ariely and Sarah Aviram.
that's
Why
the
not?
dream team. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
I know
but
it is something
It's not.
I'm
It's
sure
not.
they have like a team of 7 doing all their social media for them. So at some point, maybe I'll have that too.
Get your mom. Your mom will figure it out.
Is there plans for a follow-up book? Are you writing anything currently that you can
Actually,
discuss with us?
I am writing my second book right now, and it's super interesting because it's not going to be as kind of self-help personal development directive as my first book is, but I just have these stories inside me from that trip. I'm squeezing all the juice out of this 1 year experience.
Oh,
It's
I love
They're
it.
travel stories. They're stories of learning things about yourself through different cultures and people and environments. And a lot of them are from my journals. And I have pages and pages. I have pictures. And I'm like, I want to I want to bring these to life. And I do think I can incorporate them into my keynote talks. Maybe not for every audience. I'm envisioning like my current talk, which is much more like, here's the science behind motivation. Here's what the research says. Here's what I learned. Here are the steps to take, blah, 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 right? And a lot of companies want the actionable insights. And I imagine this other version that's a bit more inspirational, aspirational, travel stories. It's a little more entertainment. We learn in the world of speaking, like on a scale of education to entertainment, you have to ask the client, like, where do you want this talk to be? Like, do you want it, Harvard or Hollywood? Where are we going here?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, just entertain us for 60 minutes, be inspiring, throw out some quotes, And then sometimes it's like, no, give us the roadmap of what we should be doing next. So I kind of want to have both and give the client the option. And so I'm imagining the second one being a bit lighter in the, actionable steps, but perhaps more inspirational in other ways. And so working title, I think this was the subtitle, is something like 12 months, 12 countries, 12 lessons. And it'll be like a book of essays and one story, one lesson from each of the 12 countries.
I like it. I'm a big fan of it. So I'm saying this totally positively. It's kind of your eat, pray, love a little bit, isn't it?
At first I was like, should this be a memoir? I was like, I don't want to get so personal. I'm trying to, have this professional image of being like the HR professional. And I'm like, okay, I'm not in that corporate world anymore. This is the book I want to write. I'm already like, this is a Netflix series. Like a group of 30 strangers who meet in Lima, Peru, and travel the world together for 12 months, and all the things that happen to them and the cultures and the environments. I was like, yeah, this could be bigger than just like a corporate talk. So let me just write the book I want to write and see what happens.
I would watch that Netflix show. You already sold me. I'm like,
I bet you could even sell it before you write it.
Okay, if you know anyone, let's be in touch.
Maybe we are in LA here.
I know, that's right.
So I have a question, also, since I do run this pre-med program and a lot of your book and what you said just now too, is it's not just about the remote work. It's kind of about work-life balance kind of thing. And especially, what do you tell youngins? What do you tell students who are, trying to figure out what to do with themselves, or people already knowing that they're going the pre-health route, who are concerned about life and balance and all that? Do you ever, what are your thoughts? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no.
What do we tell these people?
Obviously my situation of traveling is way different than what pre-med students are going through. But one thing that advice someone gave me before I went on this 12-month trip is, look, you're going to be changing geographies every month, changing apartments every month, climate, language, currency, people. Like, it's a lot of change, and it can be quite taxing on you mentally and physically. And the most important thing you can do is have a plan for your mental health and well-being. And that might be different for each person. For some, it's 10 minutes of meditation every day. For some, it's journaling. For some, it's eating healthy. For some, it's getting your exercise in. Like, what's your non-negotiable to help your mental health that no matter where you are in the world or what's going on is going to ground you and be consistent? And I think every person, whatever stressful environment they're in, has got to find that.
Yeah. It's, I have 3 of my own daughters, but I have kind of a 4th daughter who grew up with us, who interestingly is a lot like my wife, even though she's not born of my wife. But one of the things she recently said to us is and I wonder, I don't know who she, for all I know, she got it from you. She said, try to have 3 hobbies. One hobby that feeds your mind, one hobby that, what was it? One hobby that feeds your mind, one hobby that feeds your soul, and then one that feeds your business, kind of thing. And that was,
I love it.
I mean, it was kind of, have you heard that?
I haven't, but I love it.
Yeah. Aviv, we're giving you a shout out, Aviv.
That's beautiful.
That's your, thank you. Yeah. And you did do a TED talk, right?
Yes.
Talk to us about that. I don't know if that's kind of on my wish list, but maybe I'm too nervous and don't even think I could ever do something like that. Like how did that come to be, and what was that like? And do you feel like you rocked it or bombed it or somewhat in between?
Ooh, all great questions. So, um, it was always something I wanted to do, a goal I had as someone who's a public speaker. But what is so interesting about doing a TED Talk, it's not supposed to be your body of work and everything you believe, right? It's an idea worth spreading. That's their motto. That's the mantra, right?
Right. Yeah.
So my idea, the kind of big aha from my book is this idea that like more freedom at work doesn't necessarily mean more fulfillment. And I pitched this idea, I can't tell you to how many TEDx events. I got to the last round of a few. I flew out to Chicago to pitch in person for one of them. I got so many rejections. I got so many almost, but not quite. And the truth is, at the end of the day, each event, even though there's tons happening all the time, there's tons of people applying. And let's say they only have like 7 speakers for that event and they do it once a year. And so they have to have a mix of topic and gender and, whatever else. And so just because you have a great idea, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a well curated event with your idea in it. So finally, I applied to this last one that I was hoping to get. And they were like, oh, we just closed the application, but what is your idea? And because I had done so many of these pitches, because I had prepared so much, I had gotten feedback. I had my bullet points like bang, bang, bang. Here's what it's about. Here's how I'm going to, move people at the end. Here's what how they're going to think differently. And I was just like, boom, 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 boom. And he was like, now that's an idea worth spreading. And I was like, okay. So he like reopened the application and I got in. So that was awesome.
Wow. And how was it?
And it was great. It was in Houston, Texas, and it was a little different than your typical TED Talk and it's called TEDx, right? So TED is sort of the parent company, and they really just do like 1 or 2 big events per year. And to get on like the original TED stage, you have to be Simon Sinek. Most of every other talk you see is a TEDx talk, which is like little franchises, and they're independently run and organized events under the TED umbrella. So this one, it was kind of at the end of COVID. And so they were still doing this modified event where there was no live audience because they still wanted to run their talks, but to like reduce the risk of spreading COVID, it was kind of in the studio. So it was a little weird because there was no live audience and we had to kind of pretend we were talking to a live audience. So first I was like, this isn't the experience I had in mind. I don't know. But then I'm like, okay, it's not about me. It's about this idea that I want to spread that I think is like important for people to hear. And if they get it this way, then that's fine. So I did it. And what was so interesting? Let me tell you, a 12-minute talk is so different and so much harder than a 60-minute talk. 60 minutes, which is my typical keynote talk, the points you're going to make, the stories you're going to tell, but you don't memorize it. But like, it's in you. And if you don't make this point now, you'll make it in 2 minutes. Like it's fine. You keep going, you keep flowing. But when you've got 12 minutes, you script it and you make sure every word you say matters and contributes to the idea and to the point. And so I was memorizing basically a monologue like an actor. And that was for me a whole new world that I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again. And I guess not everyone's, tries to memorize and script. Maybe they do it off the cuff, but I was like, no, every word needs to matter. I can't go off the cuff and then miss a point. So I really practiced over and over again. But then when I would like mess up and practice, I'm like, oh, and I would like psych myself out and I would be like upset at myself, even though I knew if I just kept going, the audience would never know. It was like a little bit of a, yeah. In
Wow.
the end, though, it worked out well. And I got really lucky because, this was funny. So they said, oh, we're going to edit your talk. And then it should be on YouTube within they say 6 to 8 weeks or so. So 8 weeks go by, they haven't posted it. I'm like, okay. 10 weeks go by and I'm like, oh, okay. So like, this is a little longer. And then I look on YouTube and I see other people that had spoken at my event, their videos were up. And I'm like, oh my God, they thought I was terrible. I couldn't edit it enough. Like I was making up all these stories about how bad I did and that being the reason why. And so I finally emailed my contact at TEDx and I was like, hey, do you know what's going on? He's like, no, some videos take longer to go through the compliance process than others. Like, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay. Another 2 weeks go by. Finally I hear from him and he's like, so I got this email from TEDx and they think that your idea is super relevant and timely and they don't want us to promote it locally like our Houston chapter. They want to like promote it from like the TEDx headquarters. And I was like, oh, amazing. So they make it
Wow.
like the TEDx talk of the day or something. And then they like pushed it out in like a harder way than like the local team could have. And then that got nice traction. And eventually TED, the parent company, they said they wanted to promote it and they put it on their homepage of the TED website. And apparently only like a very, very small fraction of talks. So it was like really cool that all that happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
That,
amazing.
yeah, I heard it's very, very competitive get on TED Talk. So very congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah.
Lauren, they've been asking us to go on one, but we keep saying we're too
Yeah,
busy.
but just all those emails went to spam and I just realized it. So.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, maybe it's time 2025.
I don't know. Actually, I love that. I'm taking Lauren's job since you just said it's time 2025. Do you have any New Year's resolution?
I'm going to finish my second book. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. Another one, in fact, health related. So good for this podcast. I have just finally done my research on intermittent fasting. And I've been getting really deep into a couple of books on it. And so this is something I'm going to try this year.
Intermittent fasting. All right.
I feel like, Dr. Cohen, you've done some fasting before, haven't you?
Just because of my lifestyle, I often kind of do an intermittent. Like I usually don't eat until dinner, which is usually what it turns out to be. I'll have coffee in the morning and then maybe I'll have like a banana or a bar until dinner, pretty much.
Wow.
And I'll have an afternoon coffee. And it's just because of, I don't know if it's healthy or anything. That's just because of the way it is. But my stupid non-medical doctor thoughts about intermittent fasting are it definitely can't hurt. If there were one perfect thing, there wouldn't be a zillion things. Is kind of my thoughts on diet and health. So it's just one tool that I think is usable. It is kind of my feeling about all of that stuff. I think just doing one thing, kind of like the 70-20-10, it's not just one thing. It's diet, it's movement, and it's sleep. It's all of the above. So
I think because I'm pretty good at some of the other things, I'm like, maybe I'm going to add this thing on. I've never tried. And specifically, I've been reading a couple books by Dr. Mindy Pelz, and she talks about fasting for women specifically according to your cycle. And I thought that was fascinating. And so, because I know there's been some controversy about fasting for women, and she focuses specifically on women.
Huh. I'll have to check that out. And what about one question that really I want to ask you is, you did this remote 12-month travel thing. Are you over travel? Are you still into travel? Are you done with traveling? Is it still on? Do you have bucket list things you want to do? Or
it's funny. So I did that and then came back to New York, and then COVID hit. So I was really just like in one place for a long time, as many of us were, and then started my own business. And I was like, well, just starting from scratch. I can't live in Manhattan. Like, that's going to be too expensive where I'm starting from zero again. And I was ready to go away somewhere again. So I ended up moving to Mexico City for the last 2 years. So I lived there and was going back and forth to New York a lot. And I did some travel within Mexico, but I didn't do a lot of kind of global travel. And this past summer moved back to New York from Mexico City. And so I think now that I'm back in New York and won't be going back and forth a lot to Mexico City, I'm probably ready to do more adventures again. But I'm not interested in like doing the digital nomad thing again. I want the home base and then have the ability to travel more.
Cool. Cool.
That is, one spot in Mexico. I haven't been in Mexico City. They say it's just beautiful and you have to go there. So
Yeah,
I'm interested in that.
And that's where we met. We met in Mexico City.
We brought it circle. We brought it back around.
All the way around. Okay, well, Sarah, we've taken up so much of your time and I really appreciate it, but we always end with like what we're watching in entertainment, like books, movies, TV, rec, something you're watching that you would recommend to our audience.
Yes.
Or not recommend.
Or, something you hated to avoid. That works too.
Oh, I don't know about that. Okay, well, I told you I'm reading books about fasting by Dr. Mindy Pell, so I'm very into that.
That's true.
That's what the new things I'm reading. I've, of course, watched the new Netflix series Nobody Wants This, as I'm sure to a lot of people.
Hot Rabbi?
Yeah, Hot Rabbi. It's probably time for me to watch it again, just because I can.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of top things I can think of. What else? I just saw the new Pedro Almodovar movie, The Room Next Door, with Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. And it's his first English language film, and it was very good.
Okay.
Oh, so you recommend that?
Yeah, I do.
What's it about?
Ooh, I don't know if I want to spoil it, but
Oh, really?
two old friends that reconnect. One is very sick and wants support from the other. And it's sort of like an awkward and a very personal ask from a person that you're not very good friends with. I'll leave it at that.
Like it might go into the medical realm.
It does.
Does it go
it does. Oh. It does.
Okay.
So then we definitely have to watch it and talk about it.
Yeah.
What about you, Lauren Taylor? What are you consuming lately?
What am I consuming? I haven't been to the theater. My family, I had to leave on Christmas Day, but my family watched their Christmas movie. They watched the Bob Dylan movie, and they recommend that. So I think that'll be my next watch.
You didn't see it?
No, I had to fly back on Christmas Day. So
did you see it, Sarah?
I have. Timothy Chalamet is very good.
What do you think of the movie? Because I saw it too.
It's a little slow, but I think if you love the music of Bob Dylan and his story, it's very well done.
Yeah. That was kind of my to-do holiday movie to see with my family. So we that was like, I always like around my birthday or like we're going to do something and see. So we went to see that movie. And interestingly, my wife, who isn't a huge movie fan compared to me, she really liked it more than the rest of us. But Timothy Chalamet is amazing, and the interactions were great, and the music was great. But I just thought I wanted the movie. I wanted so much more. I really like Bob Dylan's music, so I wanted to connect with him a little bit more. I am so impressed with you. I'm so happy and thrilled and honored that you were willing to say yes and join us today.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, especially since you're on East Coast time and it's late and you're probably tired. But really, thank you so much. I'm excited for your next book.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to see it as a TV series.
Oh, yeah.
I think it can be for sure.
That'd be fun.
And then we'll be talking about that for sure on the podcast.
Yes.
Yes. Love it.
So thank you so much.
Thanks to both of you so much. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate the invite.
Thank you.
Say hi to your mom.
I will. Thank you so much.
That was an amazing episode with Sarah Aviram, who is this amazing author, writer, speaker, motivator, fantastic person who we're really excited about her upcoming book. Loved having all of you tune in. hopefully we have some cool stuff in store coming up next, Lauren Taylor, don't we?
Yeah, we don't have any guests scheduled for next week, but we're going to talk about resolutions and a lot more.
We're going to talk about all our good New Year stuff, and we're going to talk about some new cool medical shows, aren't we?
Yes.
We
The
are. Thanks,
pitch.
everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am not Lauren Taylor.
And I'm not Dr. Cohen.
Thanks, everybody.